Welcome guys to the channel, and because you guys asked for it, today I bring you solo leveling part 4 recap in just a few minutes.
Okay.
After the national level hunter left, Koto Ryuji appears, a Japanese hunter and the master of the second biggest guild in all of Asia, the Grand Swords Guild. This guild has 11 out of Japan's 21 S-rank hunters. He offers his help for an incursion into the Jeju Island with 10 out of his 11 S-rank hunters. The plan was simple. They will attack from the outside, draw the ants' attention, and force them out of the nest, while the Koreans will drop from the sky straight into the nest and take care of the queen. Gogonhee liked the idea, but he was unsure if they had enough strength to succeed. Excluding himself, Dongsu, and a retired S-rank hunter, Korea only had 6 active S-rank hunters. If Jing-woo joined, it could be a possibility, but only in that case. Even so, they thought this was their best shot. The great demon Baran starts summoning his demons, and the protagonist finds himself surrounded by over 1,000 demons of various levels. Isil panics and feels trapped, but Jing-woo remains calm. He waits for the demons to get close, and when they do, he activates his monarch domain. From the ground, Spike starts to emerge and impale and kill weaker demons one by one, while the stronger ones reach our protagonist. But they're nowhere near strong enough to leave a scratch. The situation quickly turns into his favor, but from above, the great demon starts casting an electric spell. Jing-woo, thanks to his player's authority, is unaffected, but his shadow soldiers take heavy damage and get paralyzed. If this continued, his army will be wiped out and he will have to spend a huge amount of mana just to restore them. Jing-woo is at a disadvantage. Because his enemy is in the air, he leaps to try and take down the dragon, but the demon king blocks him. Jing-woo gets slammed into the ground, but manages to dodge Baran's attack at the last second. The boss isn't going to let this opportunity slip and immediately launches another attack, only for Tuss to intervene. While wielding the red orb, Tuss takes down the dragon. Now the real fight begins. Jing-woo sends out his strongest soldiers, but they get defeated one by one. His mana is running out fast, and once it's gone, he will lose all of his shadows and be completely defenseless, so he can't drag this out. With no choice, he charges in and the Demon King grabs him by the head like a ragdoll. Damn. Jing-woo takes the opportunity while his enemy is overconfident and stabs him twice, but this is not enough. The mighty Baran summons his own dual daggers, and now a knife fight begins. Against all odds, the Demon King unleashes a close-range attack. Jing-woo barely dodges it, but in doing so, he's left unarmed. Not that he cares, because with his bare hands, he grabs Baran's wrist and stops him completely. The problem? Now his enemy has him in the perfect position to strike again. But just in time, Isil throws a rock and distracts Baran. This is all that Jing-woo needs. He unleashes all of his strength and rips both of Baran's arm off. And then, with a brutal uppercut straight out of Hajime no Ippo, he sends the demon's king head flying into oblivion. Jing-woo finally did it. He defeated the mighty King Baran. His reward was a treasure trove, the lightning sword, a pair of daggers, and most importantly, the final ingredient to craft the holy water of life. Jing-woo can't wait to make the cure for his mom, and without hesitation, he crafts the holy water of life and gets 6 vials. Isil was over the moon and super grateful to Jing-woo for what he did. Thanks to him, her clan was now the strongest. She told him that they should go back to her father's house where a big feast was waiting for them. But Jing-woo, yeah, he wasn't in the mood. The thought of going all the way back down was exhausting just to think about it. Luckily, one of his rewards was a skill called Shadow Exchange, a skill that allowed him to swap places with any of his shadows. So he tells Iso she should go back on her own. Without wasting a second chance or a second, he teleported straight to his neighborhood. Oh, and by the way, he turned the Demon's King Dragon into one of his shadows and took a joyride across the city on his back. And this is where we meet Min Byung-gu, a retired S-rank healer, and if you don't remember, he was the one who called Jung-ho to warn him about the Jeju Island ants. They talk about the past, and here we learn that one of Byung-gu's closest friends died during the previous Jeju incursion. The trauma left him terrified. He immediately tells Jung-ho that he has no intention of joining the upcoming raid and that if Jung-ho is going to convince him, he should just forget about it. But Jung-ho shakes his hand. That's not why he was there. He just wanted to see Byung-go one last time because he doesn't know if he'll make it back. Meanwhile, Jing-ho finally goes to see his mom. After all this time, he had the cure. He could see her again, finally. He wasn't sure it would work, but he had nothing to lose. As he gives her the potion, a painful childhood accident comes back to his memory. The time he tried to wash his mom's hair and accidentally gave her a deep scar. Her color had returned, no longer pale, but she still hadn't woken up. Jing-woo pleaded to the heavens, hoping, begging for it to work, and then, in the middle of the night, when he least expected it,
ありがとう、ジヌ。
4 years had passed with no one to support him. Jing-woo had carried the burden of raising her sister and paying for his mother's hospital bills. He had suffered, struggled, and pushed himself harder than anyone else. But in this moment, it had all been worth it.
ありがとう、ジヌ。
The next day, Jing-woo receives a call from the chairman Gogonhee, who asked if he had heard the news. Realizing that Jing-woo had no clue, they meet up. Gogonhee explains everything about the Jeju Island and asks him to participate. Just then, Jing-woo senses a powerful magical presence. The chairman explains that it's the S-rank hunters who had gathered for training before the raid, which was now only 4 days away. Curious, Jing-woo wants to see them in action, so Gogonhee takes him to the training room where the top hunters from both Korea and Japan have gathered. The Korean representatives include famed guild master Ma Dong-wook, Reaper guild master Ling Tang-gyu, Hunters Association Bak Yan-ho, and Sha Ha-in. Meanwhile, from Japan, there's Goto Ryuju along with 9 other S-rank hunters: Ippei Isawa, Mari Ishida, Ken Tanaka, Minoru Hishono, Atsushi Kunamoto, Kanae Tawata, Tatsunami Fushima, Kei, and Akari Shimizu. If I read this wrong, please let me know. The atmosphere changes the moment Sung Jing-woo arrives. Goto Ryuji, intrigued, asked who he was. The translator explains that he's the 10th Korean S-rank hunter, which surprises him. Jing-woo barely emits any energy, assuming he must be a talented assassin type hunter. Goto is even more shocked when he hears that Jing-woo is a mage type hunter. He simply cannot believe it. Still, he doesn't think much of it. Observing the Korean hunters, he quickly concludes that they're nowhere near Japan's level. In his eyes, the only ones worth something are Sha Ha-in and Gogonhee, but even they wouldn't stand a chance against him. Out of nowhere, Park Jung-soo, the guild master of the Knights Guild, arrives. Although only an A-rank hunter, his guild, despite having no S-rank hunters, is the largest A-rank guild in Korea and the country's 5th strongest guild overall. Turns out, Park Jung-soo understands a bit of Japanese. Overhearing the translator looking down on the Korean hunters, he wastes no time putting her in her place. However, she continues mocking him with sarcastic remarks. Realizing it's not worth arguing, Park Jung-soo simply tells her that she'll soon learn what true strength is before walking away. This remark infuriates the translator. Immediately, she challenges him to a match. Surprisingly, she reveals that she's also an A-rank hunter. Park Jung-soo, uninterested in meaningless fights, proposes a game instead. Whoever grabs the other's wrist first wins. The translator, angered by his smug posture, rushes in, unleashing a flurry of attacks, but Park Jung-soo effortlessly dodges each one. Frustrated, she increases her speed, only for him to counter with a brutal kick that sends her flying. He casually remarks that it was just a little push. The translator, unfazed, mocks him, saying he shouldn't be posing like that with his legs spread. Park Jung-soo, momentarily caught off guard, sees her charging in at full speed, but in an instant he stops her cold. And to finish her off, he mocks her for being so slow. Absolutely incredible. Now that he had won, Park Jung-soo didn't miss the opportunity to lecture her. He told her that she was the type of person who always hid behind tanks and had zero experience fighting against humans, unlike the Koreans, who for multiple reasons had to be prepared to fight other hunters and, in the worst case scenarios, to kill them. Goto Ryuji liked what he just witnessed, so much so that he proposed that all S-rank hunters have a few sparring matches under the same rules to build some trust among themselves. Gogonghi accepted, but set a condition: they will exclude mage type and support type hunters, as they were harder to evaluate in this type of combat. Youngho added new rules as well. Besides grabbing the opponent's wrist, touching their back or knocking them down will also count as a victory. And instead of a one-on-one fight, it will be a team battle. With all that settled, the battle began. On one side, the representatives of Korea. On the other, the hunters of Japan. The first to take action was Ma Dong-wook, who activated his special ability and turned into a giant. One of the Japanese hunters, a brute force combat enthusiast, got excited upon seeing him. He had found the perfect rival. Meanwhile, a speed-type Japanese hunter dashed toward Lim Tang-yu, the master of the Reaper's Guild. However, Lim immediately created distance using his magic arrows to keep the opponent at bay. Elsewhere, Baek Jong-ho faced off against a strange-looking Japanese hunter, and at first his opponent displayed a strong killing intent, but at the last moment he hesitated and backed off. Apparently, he suffers from nerves during combat. Baek Jong-ho was furious. He thought Gojo Ryuji was merely testing them, so he decided to get serious and show his true power. And just like that, the Koreans started falling. Ma Dong-wook was taken down and Lim Tang-yu was slammed against the wall. But not all of them were struggling. Sha Ha-in proved why she was called the ballerina, utterly crushing her opponent. Observing the battle, 3 Japanese hunters decide to gang up against Baek Jong-ho, thinking he was easier to defeat than Sha Ha-in. Jong-ho, rather than backing down, accepted the challenge. Sha Ha-in rushed in to help him, but one of the 3 Japanese hunters had a different plan. He went after her from behind, which was a grave mistake. Without even realizing it, Sha Ha-in reacted on instinct and landed 14 consecutive strikes in an instant. Now her opponent was enraged. At that moment, the truth about him was revealed. Whenever he got mad, he lost all sense of reason, turning into a complete monster. He was a hunter capable of clearing B-rank dungeons all by himself. Goto Ryuji, noticing the change, became concerned about the destruction he could cause. He ordered that if the enraged hunter seriously injured someone, the match would be stopped immediately. The berserker wasted no time. He launched a rapid kick straight at Sha Ha-in, but before the attack could land, Jing-woo appeared and stopped it with one hand. He told the berserker that he was sorry for interfering, but his killing intent was too far high for a simple sparring match. The berserker, however, didn't listen. He launched another attack, so Jing-woo had no choice but to put him down. And just like that, Korean had lost the match. Even Baek Junho had been defeated. The difference in skill was so vast that even if he had fully transformed, he wouldn't have been able to turn the tide of the battle. Goto Ryuji, who had already harbored suspicion, was not completely certain. Jing-woo was not a mage-type hunter, and to confirm his theory, he challenged Jing-woo to a one-on-one duel. Jing-woo saw this as the perfect opportunity to measure how much he had improved thanks to the Infernal Tower, so he accepted the challenge with a smile. This act deeply offended Goto Ryuji, who believed he was being underestimated, but when the translator informed him that Jing-woo would only accept a Goto fight with all of his strength, this irritation turned into pure rage. Since a A-rank's healer was present, there was no need to hold back. Goto Ryuji decided to go all out. Jing-woo, however, effortlessly dodged every attack as if this was nothing. He found it amusing and smiled again. This only fueled Goto Ryuji's anger. Deciding he had enough of these games, he switched to attack with true killing intent. The problem? The system detected this intent to kill. Jing-woo knew that if the battle dragged on, the system might demand him to eliminate Goto Ryuji. That was something he wanted to avoid, so he got serious. In an instant, he stopped Goto's hand mid-attack. He could have won right then and there by grabbing his wrist, but ending things like that would have been boring. At that moment, Goto Ryuji had no more doubts. There was no way in hell Jing-woo was a mage. He had to be an assassin type, no questions about it. Just as both hunters prepared to unleash their final attack, they were suddenly stopped by their prospective comrades, fearing that the battle would go too far. Jing-woo didn't particularly care that the fight had been interrupted, but Gojo ended up looking like this. After the battle, Jing-woo took the opportunity to give Go-gun-hee his final decision. Normally, he would have accepted the offer to join the Jeju Island raid since there would be strong monsters to fight. But he felt like he had distanced himself too much from his family lately, so he decided not to join the expedition and instead stay with them. Meanwhile, on the Jeju Island, the Ant Queen was growing desperate. The island had run out of food for the Empire, and the ants began eating each other. They decided to escape, conquer new territory, and for that, she had birthed a new child, a child destined to surpass all others, a king. A curious fact, the reason Jing-woo had always lived in the same place was because no matter how much money they had, his mother refused to move. She still waited for his father to return one day to find his way back to that very apartment. Now, we finally see why Goto Ryuji had gone pale after fighting Jing-woo. At that moment, he felt it. Death. Everyone was shocked to learn that Jing-woo wouldn't be participating in the Jeju Island raid, but there was no turning back. The day of the raid had arrived. A massive number of A-rank hunters were stationed around the island, ready to intercept any ants that attempted to escape. Meanwhile, hunters of all ranks had gathered across Korea in case any threats made it to the mainland. The Japanese hunters had already landed on the island, preparing to distract the ants while the Korean team arrived by helicopter. One important detail, Byung-gu had ultimately decided to participate. Additionally, an A-rank hunter was with them as a cameraman, ready to document the battle. The Japanese hunters split into 4 teams and each positioned at a different corner of the island. Once ready, they simultaneously released their magical energy. Just as they had predicted, every single ant in the nest immediately swarmed out. Some of the ants targeted the approaching helicopter, prompting Choi Jong-in to step out and have some fun. The rest of the Korean hunters descended into the battlefield. At the same time, the Japanese hunters activated their interference signal. See, the ants had a form of telepathic communication, transmitting signal amongst themselves. Japan prepared a jamming device to disrupt these signals, ensuring that these ants couldn't coordinate their movement effectively. Next, we get to see a glimpse of Choi Jong-in's abilities. First, he created a magical prison preventing any B-rank or weaker ants from entering or leaving the nest. Then he launched fireballs through the labyrinth tunnels, mapping out every passage to quickly locate the queen's chamber. The ants stood no chance against them. It was a complete slaughter. While advancing through the dungeon, they stumbled upon the pupa chamber, where all the queen's eggs were kept, and there they saw it. A massive egg far larger than the rest. It had already hatched. If something that size had been born, it was likely far stronger than a regular ant and even a royal guard. But none of that mattered. They had come for the queen. The raid was unfolding exactly as Jing-woo had anticipated. The ants were being absolutely massacred by the Japanese hunters, and one of them, using his metal hands, had already taken down over 30 ants. Although he had fractured a few bones in the process, he turned to his healer companion and asked for healing, but she demanded a mandatory donation before providing any assistance. Now, before he could even reply, in an instant, 3 S-rank hunters were decapitated. Meanwhile, the Korean hunters were still searching for the queen. They encountered the first generation of royal guards, stronger than regular ants, but nothing they couldn't handle. Then, they came across the second generation of royal guards. This time the challenge was noticeably tougher, but thanks to Byung-gu and his support abilities, they managed to overcome them without too much trouble. The most impressive of them all was Shaha-in. With her newly acquired buffs, she was eliminating twice as many ants as the rest combined. But it was also worth noting the incredible feats of Byung-gu. Despite being a healer, his combat ability was on par with the strongest A-rank hunters. Finally, they reached the queen's chamber, but between them and their target stood 8 royal guards. These were 3rd generation guards. If the previous generation had already been nearly as strong as an S-rank hunter, then these ones would be an entirely different level. Still, with Shaha-in in the fight, they had a chance. Baek Yeon-ho fully transformed. Choi Jong-in decided to stop holding back. One of the Japanese teams was sent to investigate why their comrades had stopped responding. When they found the corpses, they couldn't believe what they were seeing, and then they felt its presence. One of the hunters vomited on the spot. In a panic, he tried to defend himself using ice magic, but it was useless. While Shaha-in and the others battled the royal guards, Ma Dong-wook used his tank abilities to keep the queen distracted. Back in Korea, everyone was glued to their screen, witnessing history unfold. South Korea was about to become one of the only 7 nations to ever clear an S-rank dungeon. Among the most invested spectators were an elderly couple, the parents of the fallen S-rank hunter who had perished in the previous Jeju Island raid. And just as they had wished, their son was being avenged. The royal guards fell. Even when the queen launched an attack in desperation, Min Byung-gu healed the team effortlessly, ensuring their victory. Then, in an unprecedented moment, Shaha-in accomplished what many believed was impossible. She destroyed and killed the queen. But just before her death, the queen let out an ear-piercing scream in a desperate cry for help. Instantly, every ant on the island abandoned their fight and sprinted back towards the nest. The Japanese hunters were confused, and then their interference signal abruptly failed. Choi Young-in's magical prison was shattered. A chilling sensation crawled upon their spines, paralyzing everyone inside the dungeon. The monster responsible for the slaughter of the S-rank hunters had finally revealed itself. It didn't even need to attack. Just by walking past them, it forced the hunters to experience their own death. The sheer aura of this creature was overwhelming. It made everyone instinctively submit. But it wasn't interested in them. It ignored the hunters completely, going straight towards the queen's lifeless body. And then, in a rage-filled scream, it unleashed a single devastating strike, obliterating Shahen-in in an instant. She had been completely paralyzed. The scent of this creature was too much for her heightened senses. Ma Dong-wook lost both arms in a blink. Baek Young-ho and Choi Jong-in weren't spared either. The archer attempted a ranged attack, but his arrows were swatted aside like mere toys, and then, almost as if he teleported, the creature closed the gap and smashed the archer's jaw apart. Ma Dong-wook re-entered the fight with his arms fully restored thanks to Byung-gu, but it didn't matter. He was tossed around like a ragdoll. Byung-gu, normally confident in his stealth-based healing, suddenly felt a cold realization. The monster was looking directly at him. No place was safe from this thing. Baek Young-ho screamed in horror. He could only watch as his best friend Min Byung-gu was brutally devoured. His final words, "Hyung, please run." And then the ant crushed his skull between its jaws. Consumed by rage, Baek Young-ho launched at the monster only to be stopped effortlessly. And then the unimaginable happened. The ant began to speak. It repeated Byung-gu's last word. This thing could absorb the abilities and knowledge of those it devoured, and now it had gained the ability to communicate. Looking down at the surviving hunters, it scoffed. "Weak. Who is your king?" Outside the dungeon, the creature sensed a powerful presence. Goto Ryuji. That must be their king, and with that, it bolted towards him. Meanwhile, Goto Ryuji had been investigating the missing hunters. When he arrived, all he found were their mutilated corpses. He was still in contact with the president of the Japanese Hunters Association, who upon hearing about the death was completely unfazed. As long as Goto returned alive, nothing else mattered. In fact, he asked Goto a chilling question, that now that the ants have returned to the nest, what are the Koreans' chances of survival? Goto Ryuji responds immediately, with 0% being his answer. The Ant King finally appears. Goto Ryuji manages to block the attack, but his companion isn't as lucky. The Guildmaster of the Grand Sword tells his other teammates to run immediately since they would only hold him back. However, when the ant unleashes its power, he feels the same presence he once sensed from Jing-woo, and he is killed instantly. Inside the nest, things were going terribly wrong. The hunters were still standing thanks to Mr. Byung-gu's last healing efforts, but they were too injured to fight. All they could do was rely on Mr. Choi Young-in's flames to keep the ants at bay. But realistically, it was only a matter of time before their end came to be. That's when one of Jing-woo's shadows emerges and informs its leaders of what's happening. Because yes, I probably didn't mention this before, but during the sparring match, Jing-woo took the opportunity to hide some of his shadows within the hunters, so now he uses his shadow exchange ability. The cameraman who was preparing for his inevitable death is saved at the last moment. The TV station had cut the live broadcast because they didn't want to air the massacre of their hunters. However, with Jing-woo's sudden arrival, everything changed. They immediately resumed the transmission, and Jing-woo alongside his army completely annihilate the ants. Then he turns them into his shadows, leaving the Koreans confused as per why were the ants killing each other. At the same time, he uses his potions to heal the other hunters except for Miss Cha-in, as she was too gravely injured. The Ant King furiously returns. The being outside was no king. Did humans not have anyone strong enough to be considered a true king? Jing was surprised that the creature can speak, and the two titans stand face to face. Meanwhile, at home, Jing-woo's mother struggles with the television, which doesn't seem to be working. His sister, realizing Jing-woo is nowhere to be found, checks the broadcast, and she is left speechless by what she sees. At the same time, President Gogonhi can't contain his excitement as he watches Jing-woo enter the scene. Sensing Jing-woo's power, the Ant King lets out an intimidating roar and lands a direct punch to his face. The hunters were stunned. They thought Jing-woo was their salvation, but they had underestimated the king. Even the Ant King was disappointed by how weak his opponent seems to be. However, as the smoke clears, everyone sees that Jing-woo wasn't moved a single inch. Furious, he uses ruler's authority, forcing the king to kneel before him, then returns the punch. Mr. Ma asks if they are really sure this guy's supposed to be a mage-type hunter. Meanwhile, the enraged Ant King lunges at Jing-woo once again, who blocks the attack, and a brutal blow-for-blow battle begins. The Ant King realizes he was losing in a battle of sheer strength. Who the hell was this human? He couldn't believe it. His exoskeleton was breaking and he couldn't dodge a single one of Jing-woo's blows. But he had an ace up his sleeve. Not long ago, he had devoured a deadly snail, one of the most venomous creatures in the world. And now that poison was part of his body. He injected it into Jing-woo. Unfortunate. No matter how strong Jing-woo was, there was no way he'd survive this. But exactly. Jing-woo was completely immune to poison. Meanwhile, Cha-in was in the verge of life and death. There was no time. Jing-woo had to end this fight fast, so he got serious, and the Ant King finally understood his opponent was stronger, but if strength was Jing-woo's advantage, he would simply surpass him in another aspect, because his true specialty was speed. The Ant King reverted to his original size, preparing to unleash his full potential. Jing-woo responded by summoning his daggers. With the incredible agility, he evaded the king's attack. The Ant King couldn't believe it. Strike after strike, he became aware. Not only was Jing-woo stronger, but he was also faster. The king's exoskeleton had been completely shattered. It was time to finish this. Jing-woo activated his critical hit skill and left the Ant King looking like a civilian walking through Detroit's street at night. In that moment, a new skill was unlocked: Mutilate. The Ant King, desperate, tried to flee, but Jing-woo slashed him apart, destroying one of his arms completely. The king was in disbelief. He wasn't superior to this human in anything. Well, maybe in one thing. With a deafening roar, he summoned his entire army. He wanted to see his opponent's face now. But then Jing-woo smiled, and from the ground, his own shadow army emerged. Jing-woo didn't even need all of them. Tusk was alone enough to incinerate every last ant. Even though they were watching it happen right in front of their faces, the other hunters couldn't believe their eyes. Neither could the Ant king. He, who was destined to rule the world, had been completely overpowered, and there was only one thing left to do: run. Using Min Byung-go's healing powers, the king regenerated and made a break for it, but it was useless. Jing-woo stopped him with the ruler's authority, and to make a long story short, he executed him with mutilate. The battle was finally over, but there was one thing still left to do. Jing-woo had to save his wife, or future wife. Too much time had passed. She was on the brink of death. Jing-woo immediately commanded all of his shadows to search for Min Byung-go's body. Baek Young-ho asked him what he was trying to do, but Jing-woo ignored him. He found Byung-go's corpse and attempted to raise him as a shadow. The first attempt failed. It shouldn't be a problem with his current level, but the second attempt failed as well. It seemed Byung-go's will was strong. He refused to be resurrected, but Shahen-in was more important, so Jing-woo tried one last time, and this time he succeeded. Everyone was stunned. They finally understood the true nature of his power. The cameraman realized that this was the reason why he asked them to turn off the camera. Without being asked, Byung-gu heals Miss Cha, and once he's done, and at Jung-ho's request, Jing-woo cancels the summoning. Byung-go's abilities would have been useful in future battles, but he hated fighting. Bringing him back would only make him suffer. All the other hunters retreat safely except for Jing-woo, who stays behind to eliminate every last ant. Meanwhile, in the United States, the head of the Hunters Association watches in amaze how Jing-woo defeated every single ant and says that there's no doubt he's a hunter too valuable to remain in a small country like Korea. The US and Korea have good relationship, but stealing another S-rank hunter could put them at risk. Even so, it was worth it. Besides, they had one advantage. They had information about his father. Jing-woo gains a ton of experience from the battle, even testing out his new sword. Thanks to this, he reaches level 100, and as expected, he turns the Ant King as one of his shadows. This shadow has a rank higher than even Tusk, a general rank, something never seen before, and the most surprising part, it can still talk. It seems that the general rank shadows retain speech. After thinking for a moment, Jing-woo names him Viru. In case you were wondering, he also tries to revive the Ant Queen, but she lacks the reproductive and control abilities needed to command the other ants. Since she's useless in battle, he cancels her summoning. With 4,000 ants still alive, Jing-woo sends Viru to handle them. Many ants reach the A-rank hunters, who immediately engage in combat. Some even make it to the shore, where Jing-woo's former teammates wait anxiously, unsure if they can stop them. But just in time, Viru arrives. All the ants are wiped out, and the nightmare is finally over. A proper funeral is held for the fallen heroes, and the discussion about Jing-woo quickly spreads. Some praise his abilities while others criticize him for arriving too late. They have a point. If he had come sooner, many deaths could have been prevented. Young-ho, who lost his best friend, doesn't blame Jing-woo. Instead, he offers him a sincere thank you. Meanwhile, Miss Sha can't help but blush when he looks at him. Jing-woo then meets with Go-gun-hee and declares his intention to form a guild. That's when he learns that as an S-rank hunter, he doesn't need to take the guildmaster exam, and the association handles everything for him. Shortly after, he encounters a familiar face, Adam White. He has come from the US to speak with Jing-woo, bringing confidential information that might interest him. Jing-woo asks why they will share it with him, to which Adam replies that it benefits them to release certain details to selected individuals. He also informed Jing-woo that the vice director of the U.S. Hunters Association wants to meet him personally and asks if he's willing to go. Jing-woo refuses the offer, remaining skeptical about the so-called confidential information. That's when Adam White reveals a secret: enhancement, an awakening ability that allows one awakened hunter to strengthen another. Now, Jing-woo is tempted. He meets the vice director and the first thing they show him is a folder. Normally getting the paperwork to move to the US takes a year or even two, but for Jing-woo, just 1 second. With a single word, he could instantly become an American citizen. Instead of responding, he changes the subject and asked about the awakened individual they had mentioned. Miss Selner then makes her appearance. An unusual awakened hunter, she has the ability to force a second awakening in hunters. With her powers, even an S-rank strength can increase by 20 to 30%. Jing-woo is amazed. Now he understands why Dong-soo moved to the US despite the backlash from his country. But there's a catch. Miss Selner needs long periods of rest after using her ability, meaning that only a few hunters can benefit. This was the reward they were offering Jing-woo. If he agreed to move to the US, he would be the first to receive the enhancement. Miss Selner's powers work in 3 stages, requiring 3 separate meetings. As an incentive, they offer the first stage for free. Jing-woo can't believe it. Would they really let him have it without any conditions? Of course, their real plan was clear. They were certain he would become addicted to the power and will return for the second and third stage, which allowed them to bring him to the US. However, when Miss Selner activates her ability on Jing-woo, her reaction is shocking. She immediately screams and lets go of his hand and starts sweating profusely. Her guards raise their weapons at Jing-woo, but the vice director angrily berates them. Who the hell do they think they're pointing at? He then sincerely apologizes to Jing-woo, who rather than being offended is only concerned about Miss Selner. If this situation had involved another top hunter, everyone in the room would have been dead already, but fortunately Jing-woo is not that kind of person. Miss Selner is too shaken to even speak. The vice director apologizes again and asks Jing-woo to meet them in another time. Jing-woo agrees and leaves. Once he's gone, the vice director asks her what happened. Still trembling, she explains. When she looked inside Jing-woo, something terrifying looked back at her. His infinite darkness stared right into her soul. He is one of the kings, but unlike the others, he has no limit. By kings, she means national level hunter. That's just the way she calls them. Jing-woo heads home but gets stuck in a massive traffic. A B-rank portal has appeared in the middle of the road near his office. Go-gong-hee calls him, asking if he can handle the dungeon, and Jing-woo is surprised that he's asking without a permit. But Go-gong-hee just laughs and reminds him that the Hunters Association is the one who issues those permits and he is the president. He has the final say. Jing-woo grinds and understand that he has a point. When Jing-woo arrives at the portal, a low-level hunter blocks his path. Even as an S-rank hunter, he still needs an official authorization and a minimum-sized raid party to enter. Jing-woo just hands him the phone, and after a few words from the boss, the rookie quickly backs down. Jing-woo steps into the portal, but suddenly it transforms into a red portal. At that moment, he recalls his mother, happy yet worried that her son might follow in his father's footsteps. One day inside the dungeon is equivalent to just 1 hour in the real world, which is more than enough for Jing-woo to clear it completely. And with the image of 5 mysterious hunters, the first season of solo leveling comes to an end. But it's just the beginning. In the next season, a lot more happens. Jing-woo returns to where it all started and meets the creator of the system. His sister gets attacked by a group of high orcs and a massive portal appears in Japan, as well as the monarchs are finally revealed. All of this unfolds in season 2, so if you want me to bring a 5th part to this series, you know what to do. Subscribe, turn on notifications, leave a like, and most importantly, drop a comment asking for it. Don't forget to drink water. Goodbye.